Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for joining us. So this is the Elevation Mindset Summit, where today we are going to be talking about how to elevate your boundaries. We do have some amazing speakers that we have here to bring some information to you, as well as at the end, we're going to be opening things up so that we have an opportunity to really turn this into a conversation. So to give you a little bit of history, Suzanne and I have been doing the Elevation Mindset Summit since the beginning of the year. And because it felt like it was necessary to have some of these deeper conversations, more than just 1, 2, 5 steps in order to get forward in your life, but really some practical tools, as well as a deeper conversation about what was really going on, especially since last year was such a mess for so many people. So we did start at the beginning of the year talking about vision, working into habits and flow and game, just so we can kind of build up to really elevating our lives. And today we have several people who have faced some really difficult times where boundaries were necessary, or that they needed to break through their limitations and their boundaries in order to be able to move forward in their life. So our lineup for today, we do have Suzanne Buchanan, my partner in all this. She's going to be talking really about the boundaries that she's had set for her in her life. So she is a speaker as well as a moderator for really tough conversations in areas where there is actually some amount of danger and risk. So she's actually really put herself into a place where she's willing to step in and check on people's boundaries. We also have Lisa Dorr-Pozos as well, who's going to be speaking to us about overcoming our boundaries, especially whenever they have been set by us or someone else. She is a distinguished Toastmaster and a speaker. She's also a speaking and presentation coach. And she is self-appointed part of the grammar police, because she also helps people form their words in a way that presents themselves in a powerful way. I've actually been working with her off and on for quite a while, and she is an amazing human being. And first up, to really start us off, is Tiffany Toombs. So she is an international speaker. She's an author. She's been helping coach people to retrain and reprogram their unconscious mind. She's spent over 20 years right now educating people on how to break through their boundaries, and she's going to really give us some fantastic tools in order to get there. So without further ado, we have Tiffany Toombs.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here this morning. So my name is Tiffany Toombs, as Michael said, and I'm an NLP and hypnosis master practitioner and trainer, which is really just a fancy way of saying I help people get into their mind and figure out where those blockages and limiting beliefs are so that they can let them go. And I fell into this work when I was going on my own healing journey. I had been in the fitness space for a very long time, and I had turned to fitness as a way of diving in and not dealing with my stuff. I think a lot of people can relate to that, where they find that distraction. And so for me, I realized the importance of setting boundaries through my healing journey, because I had none. I had grown up my entire life, not only with no personal boundaries with other people, but also believing that boundaries were incredibly selfish. So just pop yes in the chat or raise your hand if you have your video on, if you've ever thought that setting boundaries was selfish, or you've been made to feel like setting boundaries was selfish. This lesson started for me when I was 3 years old. My mom and my biological dad had separated. My biological dad had just met my stepmom, who was a domestic violence survivor herself. In fact, when he met her, she was still living in a women's shelter. And that was when the abuse started for me. Whenever the attention was on me was when she would start to abuse me. I would get locked in closets and burned with curling irons. But I learned through the dynamics of going back from household to household that I couldn't share what was going on with other people. My mom had severe depression and anxiety. And so sharing anything that happened to me while I was at this house made my mom's depression and anxiety worse, which made me feel more unsafe, which meant I just stopped telling people. And I figured out young that if I just changed my opinion about things, if I just didn't say no to people, if I was just a total doormat, people pleaser, martyr, rescuer, that I would be safer, that the abuse would be less likely to happen. If I blended into the background and I didn't speak my truth, I didn't show up authentically as myself, that I would be safer. And so taking on this behaviors of a people pleaser, a rescuer, a martyr, a doormat, that led me to being very unfulfilled inside. And I had so much anger, but I kept it inside and I took it out on myself through eating disorders and pushing myself in my career and in the gym and in other ways. But it also caused me to develop limiting beliefs like I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And all of this came to a head when I was living in Australia after college, and I'd been dating somebody for 3 years. And on the day that I found out I was pregnant was the day I found out that he had a girlfriend in another state. I wouldn't have even been in that relationship had I listened to my own needs, because there was points in time in that relationship where I felt unfulfilled and I considered leaving. But I didn't want to hurt him, so I stayed. I didn't set boundaries around his crappy behavior early on in our relationship because I didn't want to make him feel bad. I didn't want to put him down in any way. And so as I unraveled my life from him and life collapsed very, very quickly, I also had a miscarriage. And that was the point that brought me to my knees. And I realized I couldn't keep living life this way. I had to start setting boundaries. I had to figure out, firstly, what I needed and wanted so that I could communicate it with other people. Now, I appreciate, is there anybody, before I go into this, is there anybody here who identifies or has previously been the rescuer, the people pleaser, and or the doormat? A couple people. So one of the most challenging things that you'll ever have to do as a people pleaser, rescuer, martyr is to set boundaries. And through my healing journey, I really discovered that there was 4 steps that we have to take to set any effective boundary. And so this morning, I'm going to share those 4 steps with you, as well as 3 language patterns, 3 ways that you can communicate these boundaries to make things a whole lot easier. So step number 1 is, firstly, you have to figure out what is the behaviors that you're no longer willing to accept. This might mean that you have to reconnect with yourself and figure out what it is that you want and who you are. Because I had been whoever I needed to be. I was this master chameleon who became whoever I needed to be in certain situations. I didn't even know who Tiffany was. If you asked me what Tiffany needed, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. So I had to take some time in self-care, in self-love, to reconnect with myself, to figure out what are my needs? What do I need from friendships, from business relationships, from intimate relationships, from my family? How do I need them to show up and support me? And through this journey, I realized that I had given so much to others and had received very little back. And that's why I always felt so tired and depleted, is because my energy source was one way. It was always going out and nobody was filling me up and I wasn't filling me up. So I figured out my love languages. If you've never heard of this, it's how you feel loved and appreciated in any relationship. A lot of people think that this is just about intimate relationships, and it's not. It's about any relationship. How do you feel appreciated? And I discovered that quality time and acts of service were my love languages. I want people to spend time with me without phones and other tech, and just be present with me, not because they want something or need something from me, but because they genuinely enjoy my company. I want people to see the effort that I put in my business, in life, and show up by making me a cup of tea or giving me a shoulder rub at the end of the night. Probably more so my husband for that one than business partners, but you figure out how to communicate these once you know them, but you have to know them first. Secondly, the second step in setting boundaries is you have to know what is the consequence of somebody crossing that line. And consequence has a negative connotation, but there are positive consequences as well. The people who follow your boundaries and respect your boundaries, they get the consequence of being able to stay in your life. And those who don't, maybe you have to make the decision to let them go. This was incredibly challenging for me. I had to, in advance, grieve the loss of my family. I am the black sheep in my family. And so setting the boundaries with my family was the hardest boundary that I had to set. And in the process of mentally preparing myself to set those boundaries, it doesn't matter to me if you don't understand or agree with my goals and my dreams. I need you to support me anyways, because I don't understand what you guys do, but I am there with my pom-poms cheering you guys on, right? So we have to understand what we're willing to let go of if people aren't willing to respect and show up for our boundaries. And through this process, I realized that boundaries are not selfish. They're incredibly self-loving. And boundaries aren't there to keep people out of our life. Boundaries are the admission that people pay to be a part of our life. And I want you to know that you are so incredibly worthy of having people in your life who show up for you. And if somebody can't show up for you, then do they really deserve to be there? The third step in setting boundaries is you actually have to communicate it. Communicate it from a place not high in emotion, right? When you're high in emotion, then intelligence is lower. And so find a place and a time when you're both calm and you can have this conversation. And there are 3 language patterns that I teach in NLP that make boundary setting incredibly effective. The first one is I appreciate and. So if somebody asks you to do something for them and you just can't fit it into your day, you can set the boundary by saying, I appreciate that you reached out to me for help today, and I'm not able to help you today. If somebody doesn't understand your boundaries, I appreciate that you don't have the love language of acts of service. And I'm asking you to speak to me in the language that I understand. The second language pattern, I respect and. I respect you so much for reaching out and asking me for help today. And today my plate is so full, I'm not able to help you. I'm not the person that can show up for you today. I respect that you don't understand my dreams, and that's okay. You can still support me anyways. Language pattern number 3 is I agree and. And a lot of people think you have to actually agree with what the person is saying. You don't have to agree with what they're saying to use this one. I agree it's important to reach out and ask for help. And today, I'm not the person that can help you. I agree we have different love languages. I agree you don't understand why I think the way that I do or why I have the needs that I do, and you can still respect them anyways. Once we set that boundary, we can come to step number 4, which is, in my opinion, the most challenging step. And this is where we have to be willing to follow through on the consequence. If people are not willing to respect our boundaries, and there will be a learning period, there will be a period of adjustment where people that you've never set boundaries with have to readjust their behavior. And so you have to make sure that during that learning period, you're pointing out to them, hey, this was not okay. I've asked you to stop doing this, please stop doing this. And then if they continue to push against those boundaries, because there will be people who will just continue to test you, you have to be willing to follow through on the consequence. I had a client that I worked with on this, and she would tell her kids, your chores are to clean up your room. And they just wouldn't do it. She'd missed step number 2. She hadn't told them the consequence. And then they wouldn't do it again. And she wouldn't follow through on the consequence of not giving them their allowance for the week. And so it wasn't until she was willing to follow through on stage number 4 and not give them their allowance that they got the message. And they started cleaning their room without even being asked, because they knew that that was what was expected of them. So setting the boundary with my family was definitely the hardest boundary that I had to set. And it has profoundly transformed my relationship with them, because I no longer have to be the person who adjusts to everybody else. I get to have my needs met in that conversation. They get to understand me at a much deeper level, and they get the best version of me, because now I'm not going into conversations with them prepared for drama, prepared for conflict, carrying resentment and bitterness that I don't get to be seen in this relationship. And that means I get to show up as the best version of me. So for those of you who said that you identified with being the people pleasers and the martyrs, I appreciate that this will be the most challenging lesson for you to learn, or one of them in your life. And I also know that the people in your life who are willing to show up and pay that admission to be in your life will absolutely benefit from it, because they will get the best version of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Some very powerful ways to transition and to set boundaries, especially when it's difficult. So I guess my question for you is, which of those really was the hardest step for you to take?
For me, it was definitely the last one. I actually had to have, I remember last year actually having the conversation with my mom that I had already gone through the grieving process of letting her, my dad, and both of my brothers go, including my little niece, who is like super adorable. And I said, I've already gone through the process of grieving the loss of you, because I'm not sure if you guys are willing to make the change. And so I'm giving you the opportunity. And I just need you to know that this is a boundary that I'm serious about. And if it's too much, that's your choice. And for me, I don't think I'm asking very much.
Wow. Yeah, and I know that with family, boundaries are the toughest to hold, because we are
Absolutely. And
so connected.
I was raised in a family that, we were taught family is more important than anything else. Blood is thicker than water and all of that. And I realized that, especially, I've let my biological dad go for a long time. So I already knew that blood didn't always have to be thicker than water, and that we could choose a family of choice, not always the family of origin. And so it was when I set that boundary that they really started to take me seriously, and I think it also, because I'd done the grieving, I was able to communicate it from a place of no emotion. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I just said, this is the way it is. I want you to be part of my life. I also want people in my life who are willing to respect me and show up for me. And in case people are like, what boundaries were you setting? I was literally like, when I say I'm the black sheep, I'm the one who uses all natural essential oils and self-healing to overcome colds and flus and everything like that. And that was where I was primarily attacked by my family, who drink a lot and do other substances. So I was just asking, I don't make comments about how much you guys drink or smoke. So just please don't make comments about my essential oils and healthy eating.
Got it. Thank you for going there with us, because us knowing your journey kind of helps make it real, rather than this is something I just read in a book. Which really is kind of what our summits is about. Is we don't care what's in a book, we want to know what you've practiced and the journey that you've come on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming up for us. So next up, we have Lisa, who's going to be transitioning to kind of the other side of things, where we're really talking about our limitations. And she's actually had to, being that she is a distinguished Toastmaster, there's a whole lot of limitations you put on yourself when you think of putting yourself up in front of other people and talking. I go through this every time we do these summits, and it's like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. And she has this way of actually really making you laugh while you're also really feeling the deep feels and really connecting us with kind of our own journey. And I've known Lisa for coming up on 20 years now, I think. And she's always been a good supporter of me and a good sounding board as well, for where my message is. But I think that she's got something really special to bring you around boundaries. So, Lisa.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome, everyone. It's been great getting ready for this summit, because when I first talked with Michael and Suzanne and Tiffany about it, we realized that for one common theme, we were all bringing very different perspectives and stories and experiences. And I think that we really altogether have a very powerful morning for you. So I'm glad to see so many people tuned in. As Michael said, switching gears from Tiffany's take on boundaries and how supportive and nurturing they can be, when I first heard the word, I thought of limitations. And I realized that the first definition of boundaries I ever came across was probably in like third grade, when you get that map with all the lines and you get told this is the United States, and you start learning what all these different lines represent. And here are the lines that make California, and here are the lines that make Texas or wherever. And you learn that boundaries create these spaces that are sort of unique unto themselves. And that's a limit. This boundary is where California ends. This is where the United States ends. And then there's something else beyond it. And my question for all of you is, do you know what your boundaries are? When it comes to words like can't, won't, shouldn't, what are your boundaries and limitations? And once you've identified them, do you know who set them and where they came from? Working in mentoring speakers and presenters, the boundary I encounter with these individuals is almost universally fear. Public speaking is one of the top fears in any poll or survey you read. One of my favorite anecdotes is that in a lot of surveys, public speaking is the number one fear that people mention, and death comes in at number 2, which means at a funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. And as I work with people who have this fear of speaking in front of others, almost none of them can tell me where that fear came from. No one has ever told me, oh, I flubbed a line in the 4th grade play and I've never been able to speak in front of people since. No one has a story of when they were told, you're a terrible speaker, you should never open your mouth again, just sit there and shush. And yet they're scared of getting up and opening their mouths in front of others. And one of my challenges as a coach in that department is it's really hard to alleviate a fear when you can't attack the origin of it. So unfortunately, I'm the parent on the dock who throws you into the lake, and that's how you're going to learn to swim. But for me, I've never had this fear. People who know me will tell you I have no problem standing up and opening my yap in front of people. So when I discovered Toastmasters in 2014, this was my tribe. I had found a group of people who enjoyed writing and delivering speeches for fun, because we're nerdy like that. And I did very well in Toastmasters from the beginning. I had speech experience from high school and college, but I was looking for ways to grow this and develop my skills. What else can I learn? Where else can I go with this? And the way the Toastmasters program was structured when I joined was your first level of achievement was a series of 10 speeches. There was a persuasive one, an instructional one. You had an icebreaker where you just had to get up and talk about yourself. And the last speech of those 10 was inspire your audience. And I had become known for using humor in my speeches. I was trying to figure out, well, how do I inspire people? I'm used to making people laugh. And I didn't have a fantastic, rich tapestry of personal stories in my background. I had a dully, reassuringly normal life for the most part. And I finally thought of a story. I had moved to Santa Cruz in 2009 with my then husband because he had lost his job. We had a baby. We filed bankruptcy. I lost my job. And then just for good measure, we had a house fire. So I realized I could tell a story about overcoming these challenges and how I was sort of rebuilding my life. But the problem I ran into was I didn't know how to make this funny. I had set a boundary for myself, cleverly disguised as a strength. Because I had found I was good at bringing humor into presentations, that was what I did. I set out to write entertaining, engaging, humorous speeches for any project, every opportunity that I had. And I had no idea how to do that with this story. How did I bring laughter to washing load of laundry after load of laundry to get the smell of smoke out? Where's the laughs in sorting through a charred pile of what used to be your infant son's play area? And so I went to my mentor, Mike, and I said, Mike, I've got my story. I know what I want to say, but I'm stuck. Let's face it, writer's block is a universal boundary, whether you're speaking or writing. Getting that story together and out is a boundary that most of us have dealt with. I told Mike, I don't know how to make this funny. It had drama, it had emotion, it had challenge and resolution, but there weren't a lot of laughs in it. And Mike looked at me, and in one of the most perfect mentoring moments ever known in all of mentordom, he uttered 5 simple words. Does it have to be? One simple question, and my mind was blown. And that boundary of I'm the humorous speaker was shattered. Went back to my desk. I wrote the speech in no time flat. It just completely flowed. I just told my story. And when I presented it a couple of weeks later, for the first time, I choked up while I was speaking. It had never happened before. People in the audience were in tears hearing this story. And when I was done, and my evaluator got up to give me feedback, he came over to me and he took both of my hands in his and he said, thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you for letting us into this part of you and trusting us with it. And then I'm crying again. And it was such an epiphany to realize that I had been limiting myself by aiming for the humor and thinking that was what I did. Like a bad Hollywood agent, I had typecast myself into the role of, I'm a funny speaker. Several years later, in another Toastmasters training meeting, one of our leaders spoke about the comfort zone, that little happy nugget we all know where we are safe and comfortable and successful and life is good and everything is familiar and steady, and we all like our comfort zone. And she assured us that there was nothing wrong with liking the comfort zone, which sort of tells you there's something coming next. And she said that outside of the comfort zone, it's not this sudden cliff that drops off into danger and oblivion and insanity and the unknown, but that outside of the comfort zone, like a bullseye on a dartboard, there's the next ring, which is the safety zone. And she told us how you can step outside of your comfort zone and try something new. You can do something different without having to go completely overboard. It's not black and white. It's not all or nothing. There are these layers through which you can work through to push yourself, to try something new, to do the next thing. And I really wish I'd heard that before my speech about my house fire, because it would have made the whole thing much easier, but then I wouldn't have a story for you. So from then on, as I've mentored people and as I've worked on my own speeches and presentations and stories, I've stepped out of my comfort zone a lot more because of that one speech in 2014. A few years ago, I gave an award-winning speech on my journey with depression and anxiety, which, first of all, if you're known as the humorous speaker, no one is expecting a speech on depression and anxiety. But second, I once again was able to really share my vulnerable, authentic self with people. And I had people come up and thank me for the speech. It gave them inspiration and tools to help themselves and to help others who were on similar journeys. So I'm going to challenge all of you. The next time that you're in your comfort zone and you're doing well and you're thriving and you have found what you're good at and things are going well, think about that safety zone beyond. Ask yourself, what is the next thing that I could be doing? I'm in a good place now. Where can I go from here? What boundary can I break next? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I really appreciate that, because that's really taking us to kind of a vulnerable place inside of a vulnerable place, which I really appreciate. So I guess my question is, what would you say is the most recent limitation that you've broken? Where have you applied this recently?
The most recent limitation I've broken is actually one that I'm currently in the process of breaking. Thanks in part to the pandemic in 2020 and life, the universe, and everything, my depression and anxiety have decided recently that they want to be back in the driver's seat. And I hit that point where if you picture an elaborately woven Celtic knot, picture that each of those threads, where you don't know where one ends and the next begins, but one of them is depression, one of them is anxiety, one of them is insomnia, one of them is physical discomfort, one of them is headaches, one of them is stress. And you can't tell where's the cause, where's the effect, where's the symptom, but you know they're all tangled together in a lovely, not so beautiful Celtic metaphysical mess. That's where I've been lately. So I have been taking steps to address the physical, the mental, and the emotional, the environmental. My family is actually leaving today for a week. I'm going to have the house to myself. I'm off work for a week. And yes, while the urge to throw a wild party is strong, I just sort of made a list of little self-care, self-help tips. And yes, sleeping is one of them. I'm in California, and I had my alarm set for 7 for today's event. And my brain decided that, 5:25, that's a perfect time to wake up on a Saturday when you don't have to do anything for a few more hours yet. So my initial plan of, I'll sleep in on Saturday first. Oh, I've got that thing Saturday morning. Okay, well, I'll sleep in a little. Nope. So the plan this morning is after this, when my family gets on the road, I'll kiss my son goodbye and hug the folks. And then I'm going back to bed for a bit.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, that self-care thing is at least for me is one of the biggest challenges for setting a boundary of this is my time for my self-care. And I see so many other people who also run into that because especially for us people who like to take care of others, we tend to be the last priority on our list. And that's certainly one that I've been working on breaking for the last couple of years. So thank you very much, Lisa, for all of that. So we've kind of seen both, setting positive boundaries that are going to keep you moving forward, as well as those limitations, those boundaries that have been set upon you or that you set upon yourself and where you've typecast yourself. So next up, we have Suzanne, who's really, her skill is actually weaving all this stuff together. And that's one reason why we've actually worked so well together for this past year is that she, for me, is that 10,000 foot view. I tend to be the one who's doing the nuts and bolts. Because that's where I thrive, and it's been a great partnership around that. But we really appreciate being able to pull people together from all walks of life. I mean, I see the list of people that we have here right now, and they're all over the US and some that I believe are actually overseas and what have you. So it's awesome to have these kind of conversations in this day and age whenever technology can get us there. So without further ado, Suzanne is my partner in crime in this, or partner in elevation in this would probably be a better way to label it. And she is a speaker. She's also a moderator and facilitator. She's also someone who is really involved in the natural health community, primarily because of her journey of needing it for her to not only survive, but to thrive. And she really brings a lot of insight to our summits, and I'd like to have her take us on to the next phase of elevating your boundaries.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Okay, you guys with us? I see some faces. I don't see all faces, but I so hope that you're feeling us. And I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful I'm here, and we'll get to that. But I wanted to just introduce myself a little bit and really give thanks to Tiffany and Lisa for setting this up, because we had one example of, and guys, you have to all resonate with this no matter what your childhood experience is, the ways that we're programmed from the get, the ways that we come into life. We are always pure and beautiful, but we come into life and parents, society, our experience suddenly limits us. And children aren't born racist. They're born loving. That they're born not knowing that there's any boundaries to their life. They want to be astronauts. They want to be doctors. And none of them have ever come spitting out and wanting to be gangsters or criminals, right? We are born good. We are still good. But sometimes life shapes and molds us. In fact, it always does. So part of our journey is looking at how that happens and what we can do, and when the time is right, to shake that shit off. Because this is your day. This is your journey, guys. No messing around, right? We're already in June. We survived 2020. Thank goodness you're all here. But now it's time to really focus on where we need to go. So in January, I don't know if you guys were with us, but please, I hope you do stay with us, because we've designed this year of conversation to get us where we need to go, because we believe in your potential. January, we focused on your vision for your life. February, we focused on the habits you need to get there. And let me tell you guys, if you haven't kind of gotten an idea from today, without setting healthy boundaries and obliterating the limiting ones, it's going to be really freaking hard for you to get there. And as Tiffany reminded us, you deserve to get there. You deserve to reach your goals. So what are we doing now that's going to help us identify the unhealthy boundaries and set new ones that constructively lead us in the direction we're meant to be? So as Michael mentioned, I have a background in natural health. I was born with a potentially fatal blood disease. It's extremely rare. On the planet, there might be 200 of us that are alive at this point. And starting off, I had a really sick childhood. I was in the hospital all the time. I was told I would have to live a very limited life. I was given the strength of prescription medicines they give open heart surgery patients after their surgeries to prevent infection, because everything was a danger to me. I've been on respirators, the ventilators. I've had, drug resistance where my body no longer responds to any antibiotics. I've been in a coma. I've had a 3% chance of living. I've woken up and seen my family that have flown in for my funeral. I was told I would be very limited, but there's something that happened when I heard those words, guys. Let's talk about boundaries. When I heard those words, they didn't hit me. For some reason, they fell short of me on the floor. And all I knew was that no one knows me. My very own parents that, are champions, right? Not always. And the truth be told, they're doing the best they can with what they have and who they are. But even then, no one knew what was inside of me. And I'm willing to guess no one knows what's inside of you. You chart this path. This is your journey. And so while Tiffany gave us amazing relationship skills that helped her break through so many levels to the point where you can see, you can feel she's leading the way. And Lisa told us about how fear had held her back, how a limiting identity had held her back. Guess what, guys? We put boundaries on ourselves. We are always our own worst enemy, right? So how do we break this off? How did I break through this limiting life? How did I go from being afraid to leave my doctors in Ohio to living in rural Pakistan, to working on global conflict, to being the mediator, working with gangs and in high stakes, tense environments that are physically demanding, working for the Department of Justice? How did I get there? I blew shit up. And I want you to take a good look at your life, a good look at what's holding you back, and decide. This is your time. So when you think of the word boundaries, was it immediately good or bad? Lisa talked about how when she heard it, she was like, she saw the blocks and limitations, the boundaries on the map, everything that defined by others, not defined by you. And that's where we need to redefine. That's where Tiffany dove in, and she created expertise in helping people rewire their thoughts and minds. This is living with intention. This is helping you break free. So this is the direction of our trajectory, right? You came here today because you have goals and dreams, and there's somewhere else you need to be. And we're talking about the steps that it's going to take to get you there. So when you look at the word boundary, You know, to some, it's about being locked up in chains. But to some, it's about potential. It's about action. I am bound to be an amazing partner. I am bound to be successful. I am bound to eat that cookie. Right? But it can be full of potential, or, you know, you can't avoid it. It can also mean constipation, right? So you can get bound up. So we decide, though, our definition and how we want to use it. So do you guys know how to tell if a boundary is healthy or not? In my work, I've really come to see that there are maybe 4 ways you can tell a boundary is healthy or not. And if you've been with us this year, you'll kind of know where I'm going. But the first one is a boundary or a fear that you have, is this limitation preventing growth? Super simple, guys. This isn't rocket science, but what it does require that, you know, Tiffany's gone through is reflection and self-awareness. That's part of the journey. So does it block your personal growth? The second one is, you know, does it lead to inaction? The deer in headlights. Do you freeze? Is it preventing you from moving forward? Is some identity that you think you are, well, that's not me. Are you sure? Inaction is a big sign. The universe is not standing still. Vibration are sent out into the universe. The universe favors action every time. So inaction can be a sign that it's an unhealthy boundary. A third one would be that it conflicts with your values. If holding you back conflicts with the core values that you have, I want to reach out to this person because they're on my heart, but I haven't talked to them for a long time. They might reject me. I don't know. I just have this feeling. Action. You want to show up for people. And the last one, the fourth one, is that the boundary conflicts with your vision. That vision for your life and who you know you're meant to be. That vision for who you are growing into, that's on your path, your trajectory. That's how you know if a boundary is healthy or not. So right now, guys, this is your time. And I want to know from you to let me know now, maybe in the chat, maybe if you want to just pop off. I want to know what's a boundary you need to set in your life. Is it a relationship boundary? Is it a time boundary? What are the priorities that you're struggling with? Put it in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. And the path for me, the path to getting from those limitations to where I am now has always been, and forgive me guys, confrontation, to confront those fears, to confront those boundaries, which required great self-awareness, as Tiffany told us. And for me, that looked like setting boundaries on my diet, my nutrition. It also meant setting boundaries on the importance that other voices in my life had. I had doctors that went into their practice to help as many people as they can. I would never doubt their intentions, but a chronic disease is chronic because there's no cure. And so if the best they can do was prevent me from dying, I got news for you. There's more. There's more for me. And I'm sure there's some area in your life where there's so much more for you. So really, this is a question of your values, the cost. What is the cost of not setting healthy boundaries? To Tiffany, a people pleaser, which I know something about as an empath that wants to like help the world. How do you think a redhead with the potentially fatal blood disease ended up in Pakistan? Oh, so I get that, right? So what are those healthy boundaries you need to set, and at what cost? What is the cost of not setting them? If you have amazing big dreams, how are you going to get there without boundaries? You think maybe because you're over 20, over 30, over 40, there's nothing left for you? Guys, I'm over 40 and my fire's just starting. Do not let age be a boundary for you. Do not let your fear hold you back from who you're meant to be. So as we close, I want to open this up because this is your time. We've been, a bit of talking heads, but it's only because we feel like there's something of value here. And I would love for this to be your time where we share. And if this is your first time with us, this is how we roll. This is a safe space. We're talking about real stuff here, and we really welcome you to share. And if you have questions for us, we're here. And Michael, I'd love for you to lead the way.
Sure. Thank you, Suzanne, for kind of wrapping us up with that and kind of connecting a few of the dots for us. I very much appreciate the fact that everyone approaches their boundaries different. Everyone sees their boundaries as limiting or as empowering. And I really wanted to, ask everyone here, how did that land for you? Is there something that came up? Is there a boundary that it has been plaguing you for some period of time that you're ready to reset, that you're ready to make again? Julianne, did you have something?
Hi, I just wrote, this is fantastic, by the way. Unfortunately, I came in a little late, but I got to see the last two speakers in full and the previous speaker, I guess, toward the end. And I'm really touched by the vulnerability that's been shown. And that's been one of my difficulties. Fact that I had no boundaries as a child. I actually learned recently that I was suffering my whole life from CPTSD due to prolonged trauma in childhood and being reduced to meaninglessness, worthlessness. So I have difficulty with allowing other people into my life fully and intimacy, really getting a profound relationship because of trust, obviously.
Gotcha. So is there anything in particular that you're doing to approach that? What are you doing to break that down?
Well, getting involved with things like this and in the Life Book program, I know some others are aware of that program, and just beginning to talk to other people and to get real in a way like this, instead of I can very much relate to, I think it was Lisa, the lady before, who talked about the humor aspect, because that's how my family handled, that's what our intimacy was, humor. And it's great, but I realized that I was always putting on a show, and that that was a barrier, that was creating a barrier. And I easily get choked up, so I'm gonna try to, but anyway, I want to give up, I don't want to take up all the time, but so what I'm doing is just engaging more with other people. And it's been really great. It's been really great. I got tons of support recently in a group, and I'm learning to sit back a little bit more and not have to perform. I also do have a natural performing streak, so I'm sort of fighting myself a little bit when I do that. But so that's what's been helping. And I just got so many beautiful nuggets here from all you guys. I just was walking while I was doing this, and I missed that first item you said about how you know when your boundaries are working against you. What was the first item, just so I can have all four?
Yeah, it was just that they prevent growth.
Prevent growth. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm so glad you're here and you're in the right space. And I would love to see you on this journey. So thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Julianne, I just want to say, I think your vulnerability is incredibly important when you're ready to share your journey. I'm personally currently on a mission to educate people about what trauma is and about CPTSD, because there's so much misunderstanding and so much change that is happening in that space. There's a really great study that you can check out called the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experience Study. And they talk about how, so it's 10 questions on the, and you can actually take the test there. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And it's 10 questions relating to different experiences that people may have had in childhood. And we're starting to understand the long-term impacts of that. And even the CDC is starting to recognize childhood trauma or childhood neglect, abuse, bullying as an epidemic that is leading to things like attention deficit disorder in schools. So we're seeing all these kids who have been misdiagnosed as ADD or ADHD, and they've, like Lisa talked about, they've put these limitations on themselves because of that diagnosis. And that has stopped them from showing up. My husband is one of those people. How they're more likely to suffer from chronic depression that's not treatable with antidepressants. They're more likely to experience financial strain and earn less money over the course of their lifetime. They're like 4 times more likely to die from one of the 15 leading causes of death in the US, because trauma significantly impacts the body in ways that we're really just starting to understand. So as you feel more comfortable and you share more of your journey, it'll allow people to see in themselves. And I'm saying this as somebody who denied my trauma for a really long time, right? I mean, at 7, I was left on the side of the road for dead. And I still said to myself, well, I didn't have it. It was one time. I didn't have it as bad as this person. You know, it only happened up until 10. And so that stopped me from healing for a long time because I didn't accept it. I judged myself for having it. I denied it. I shoved it away like, no, I'm not that person, right? Until I couldn't deny it anymore. So I think the more of us that start to share our journey, and this doesn't just go for Julianne, this goes for everybody, whether it's bullying or you had a parent that worked all the time. I've worked with multiple teenagers who have low self-esteem and feelings of unworthiness, all the way up to suicidal thoughts, just because they have parents who work a lot, right? And this is nothing against the parents. It's just the child is not getting their need met. So whatever your story is of neglect or abandonment or bullying, or maybe you just had a parent who didn't know how to deal with their own emotions and they dumped on you, or couldn't hold space for you to experience whatever your emotions were, start sharing that story, because that's how we help more people heal.
Thank you for bringing that, Tiffany. Really appreciate that. Morgan, did you have something that you wanted to talk about? Saw that you came up on camera.
No, I'm sorry. I don't have anything.
Okay.
I just want to say that these were really great presentations. I really got a lot of great information from this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for showing up.
Guys, we're so happy to have you here. And we know it's Saturday, but we are here for you. So if there's any, I mean, if you want to work something out, let's talk about it, because we are here for you. And I know it's like, it's harder in the summertime, right? The day is there. So we love that you came with us on Saturday morning.
Aaron, I see that you've got your hand raised. Did you have something you wanted to bring?
Oh yeah, hello. Yeah, it's really cool. I've been enjoying my third summit, kind of third, because the one I watched in the recording so far. So that's really great. I'm always happy to free up some space for that, even though it's summer. So yes, I really appreciated it. For me, it was just the concept for people who don't know me. Can you hear me properly? Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm still a student studying, right? And as you know, that's also, you have a lot of opportunities, right? And your friends are going out and studying in the park, or playing table tennis, or playing basketball, or going partying, or whatever, you know? And oftentimes it was like, damn, that's cool. I definitely want to join, right? But then slowly but surely, I was realizing I really have to set boundaries, especially when right now, well, during COVID times, I set up my routine and it worked fine, right? And I was really happy about that. But then right now, everyone, I'm living in the Netherlands and they're very generous with making everything open. And it was like, well, over the last couple of days, my routine and my boundaries were like put down over again. And right now I'm currently trying to rethink everything and trying to restructure. And I'm still not getting behind that exactly to, okay, how is it when it's getting more chaotic, when there is such a different thing right now, because this hopefully post corona phase will probably be very challenging for me, as I really have to say no to a lot of things because I love myself and my growth and whatever words you can choose there. So my question, I would say, is how do you juggle these boundaries better, even if it's getting more chaotic, when you're traveling, for example, or going somewhere, right? And it's like, well, it's a nice evening with friends and maybe I'm not doing my daily review. So I guess that would be the question. Yeah.
You want me to go? I can.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
So I love that question. And as somebody who has had to, I think all of us are experiencing that. First of all, as things open back up, we have more options. And not just that, but even all the remote work that happened, like people no longer had somebody standing over them or watching them. So some people going into COVID, you know, it sounds like, Erin, you did well structuring yourself there when options were, you know, more limited. I have friends who did worse because they didn't have the boss and the work environment, and they, you know, suddenly had a really hard time structuring that time. So one of the things I always say is that while I thrive in structure, we also have different needs that surface at different times. And it is totally okay if your social needs, the connection needs you have with others, feels like it was a little neglected over the last year. I mean, human isolation is not healthy for any of us. And there are all kinds of studies that have been coming out recently about that cost of quarantine. So I would advise you to be very and you're already so reflective. Oh my goodness, I love the way that you're being so conscientious about your life, but give yourself a little leave to make sure that that social and connection need is being met to some degree. Also, it's okay to play a little bit. We've been cooped up now to the point where it starts infringing upon your success and your progress. Again, structure it. Like maybe that amazing play date comes every 2 weeks. Maybe that happens, you know, but have those, like the life book process is so comprehensive. And for those of you that don't know what that is, Michael can share a little bit more about it, but it's okay to address some other needs because we're human and we do need connection and you do need to play. I think 80-year-olds need to play. I think 60-year-olds need to play. You know, in fact, I often talk about detoxing friends that are not really letting us set our boundaries or respecting our boundaries, or detoxing people who are negative in our life. I also set boundaries with people and play. I once put a very BFF on notice and I said, I love you, but you know, I'm not here to be your counselor all the time. We need to play. And our friendship just soared. So be cognizant of that, but also schedule it in so you don't feel like you're always missing out. So that was just my 2 cents. I'll shut up.
I was going to kind of approach that from the same direction, is that our life is not just about study. It's not just about our emotional needs. It's not just about our health and fitness. It's not just about our partner. It's also about our contribution. It's also about our interaction with other people. It's also about our interaction with our family. And it really is a matter of I know that you up to this point have created a life vision. So that to me is what that filter is this in that life vision that I've created in my life book, which really is looking at all 12 categories of your life and making sure that you're living a 12 category smart life, not it's home and work and home and work, because that leads to people who are, I believe, that led me to being very unfulfilled in my life. So, and making sure that there is that opportunity. Also with the longer life book framework, it's also looking at each of those categories too over time and refining it. And if social needs an overhaul, look at that and see where that can actually fall into your goals if you're feeling that disconnection. But I would definitely look at, I use my calendar to scope out everything that I'm doing. So make sure that there is all 12 categories present on your calendar too.
And by the way, guys, Michael is so much better at this than I am. Like he said, I'm like the 10,000 foot person, and he's all about the accountability, which, not that I don't love that, but he really is great with the structure. So like he said, that's why we're a good team. And he's a great person to talk about that, like how to make sure you're implementing those things in your life so that you are your beautiful whole rounded self. So anyone else?
Follow up? I mean, if no one else has a question, I do still have one.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, it's also correlating with doing a lot, right? Lately, I've been, especially with university, I finished my university year. So right now, it's really every day is intrinsic motivation. And I felt myself pushing all day towards the things I love, which is great. But then setting these boundaries for myself was really hard to say, well, Aaron, take a break. Aaron, you stop at 8 and not at 9, because at 10 you want to sleep. And setting these boundaries for myself actually was pretty hard lately, not necessarily for others, but for myself. And I don't know, do you have any insights for that?
I would say for me, I'm both a fan of creating routines for success, and I think that sometimes people get so bogged down in creating the routine that they lose the ability for flexibility. And so what I encourage people to do is to figure out what is the intention behind the thing, what need is being met, and then you can kind of move and pivot within the morning. So for example, within a morning routine, I ask people, what is the intention of the morning routine? How does that morning routine allow you to show up in the day? What does it set you up for? And then some mornings I will want to do yoga. And some mornings I will want to read. And so I can move and pivot within my routine to have flexibility to show up, so long as I'm getting the intention. So for you, some days it might be more beneficial for you to study for a little bit of extra time because you still have that energy, you're still engaged, you're still, focused on what you're doing. And then sometimes you might be feeling tired or brain foggy. And so stopping an hour earlier than you had planned might be better for you. So it's really about what is the intention behind the routine that you're creating or the boundaries that you're creating for yourself so that you can move and flow within it based on what you need in that moment and where you are. And then, as somebody mentioned, I'm also a big fan of setting alarms in my phone. I have an alarm that goes off every hour so that I can keep track of time because I'll forget to eat. I literally am one of those people who will get so focused in on something, I forget to eat. Or I looked up the other morning and I was like, it's 1 a.m. Right. And I was like, so intent on what I was doing that I didn't have my phone by me. So the alarm didn't go off, that I didn't see it. So setting those alarms to remind you of do these things at these times. I have alarms that go off at night because my husband and I are very intentional about shutting down our tech at 8 o'clock, having some connection time, doing some stretching and other things. Another alarm goes off at 9 saying, start the wind down routine. And then 10, get your butt into bed and, start meditating to go to sleep. So, to give yourself that flexibility, I'd figure out what is the intention, and then to help keep you on track, you can set those alarms for sure.
Thank you, Tiffany. Did that give you some insight, Aaron?
I would say yes, definitely. Thank you for that, Tiffany. Still, I often kept track of the time, especially in the evenings.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt myself stretched a lot. But I think I didn't value the off time too much, or the feedback and digestion time, because I thought I can do everything all the time. It kind of worked. But then I still had the slow upcoming feeling right now that I need to set more boundaries, especially in the evening. And even if I said, well, 8:30 and there was an alarm going off, I said, well, I can do a bit more.
Yeah.
So that was still very, very hard for me. I don't know.
It is hard. So Aaron, and you and I can talk about this maybe offline, but I'm somebody who can see that calendar alarm and ignore it. Right? Let's be real, guys. This is real stuff. So, I have a schedule set every morning to do these work sprints. Well, sometimes that work sprint doesn't happen at that exact time. And I have part of my health routines. My health routines are real things here for me because when I don't follow them, I suffer, right? The consequences are super real. But some of them are boring or they take time. They take valuable time. I have scoliosis exercises that take an hour every day. And it's so funny when I'm at the gym doing them, people have come up to me to see if I'm dead or something because I'm really just standing there. I'm sitting there doing breathing exercises on the floor. They can't even tell because I'm not really moving. So, doing things we don't want to do is part of it. Part of making sure that we get to where we need to go, that we're nourishing all these different parts of ourselves. And sometimes that's the type of boundary you need to set, is the discipline one. And I don't know if you were with us when we talked about discipline, because that was, Michael, was that April something? I think it was April that we talked about discipline. So again, it's not going to feel great. It's not always what we want, but the long term, when you keep that long-term vision of your life and where you need to go, and that long term looks like either a pretty well-rounded person socially, but a successful person, then we have to really discipline ourselves. So sorry, that's not a sexy, fun hack, but it's real. You gotta set that boundary. And I'm sure, like Tiffany was said, I'm sure she and her husband don't always feel like doing something, but you do it anyway.
So just to add one last little piece to that. So what has worked for me is I've kind of taken the life book process and then distilled it down from my foundational goals all the way down to a daily commitment. So actually taking the funnel focus that I don't just make to myself, I actually make it to someone else. And then I'm held accountable to it. So that accountability is not something that I just say everyone else should do. This is something that I'm doing every freaking day. So by 11 o'clock, I've sent that out. And if sometimes that is be in bed by 9 o'clock, that may be what my intention is for that day, because I know that I can get off track really easily during the day, because I too can, start that thing. It's only going to take me 5 minutes at 9 o'clock. And then as Tiffany said, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You're like, wow, that I lost track of time in that. But it's really a matter of setting that intention every day and having that be the rhythm. So that's what I really have used for me to get there. Thank you, Aaron. So for those of us who are still here, so thank you everyone for sticking it out to the very end. I just had one last question for those who wanted to answer is, did something come up for you? Did one of the experiences that some of these speakers bring to you remind you of something? Or what's a takeaway that you've taken from today and what people have shared? And feel free to either raise your hand like Aaron did or take yourself off mute and give us some feedback, because that's how we grow and that's how we can help others grow.
I'll share. Definitely the set boundaries. Tiffany's talk, I didn't even realize most of my life. Stayed in a very long-term relationship, lots of boundaries crossed because I allowed it. Totally. I loved her 4 steps. I wish, I had learned it earlier, but I'm really glad I know it now for the future. So I understood coming out of it, and I got into another relationship, which was much shorter and still was doing the same thing, but I was able to see it. But you putting words to those steps, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll just be able to implement that now without learning it the hard way. So thank you. It was really good. All of the speakers, I enjoyed all of it.
Awesome. I'm so glad that it helped.
Anyone else?
I I can also put it in the feedback form, which you send out, but I can also say it now to say it like directly, which was great. So 3 things I appreciated, I guess 1 each. So Tiffany, I really appreciated the methods you shared. I appreciate and, like the end, you use that frequently during the whole talk, really resonated a lot. So that was great. And I respect and I agree and. That was really good method. And Lisa, you inspired me to see, okay, where are my boundaries? And I can ask myself, well, are these my own boundaries or did someone else set them? And also you doing the Toastmasters thing also reminded me of this fear setting where you're also sometimes holding back because of fear. So I'm trying to get into or incorporate kind of a routine for myself to kind of step out of my comfort zone just a little every day. So that was great. And Suzanne, that was great for the questions or the small step process. You posted that I can ask myself more often to accelerate my growth. So 3x, thank you.
Just to wrap things up, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for actually showing up and being aware enough that there are ways we can elevate, because not all of us have all the answers. It's when we actually bring people together and we share that idea that it takes a village. And I am so grateful that we have this opportunity to create this digital village so we can ensure that everybody can elevate their lives. So thank you very much again. And for all your comments, we will be sending out a survey form as well to give us some feedback, because that's how we grow. It'll also include contact information for all the speakers that spoke today.
And guys, if I may, next month we're talking about freedom. So get ready. We're really excited to talk about that. And we've got great speakers. So I would love to see you.
Awesome. Thank you, Suzanne, for that reminder.
Yeah.
And then have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We really appreciate your time, especially on the weekend. And we will see you again soon. Thank you. Take care. Bye.